So in wrestling, there is a rule. Well, not really a rule. Well, there is. There's an unwritten rule, and Lance Storm tweeted about it. But usually, it is not uncommon that dead family members get brought up in storylines in wrestling, or in Vince McMahon's case, sports entertainment. I'm sorry, I said the W word. I apologize. But that's we see that it's a mainstay, and Lance Storm tweeted this out on Tuesday morning. What the unwritten rule is. So this is Lance Storm. You can follow him, by the way, at Lance Storm. Diva Seg on Raw comes down to whether you're okay with using real life and real tragedy in an angle. If you are, it was great. If not, it wasn't. Then he tweets again. IMO, using real tragedy is fine as long as family is okay with it. It's their life. Folks, let's face it. Eddie Guerrero was not just brought up sporadically after his death in Rey Mysterio's world title run. He was an active character. The focus was on Eddie Guerrero. Do we not remember what happened with Paul Bearer? With The Undertaker and CM Punk and that whole thing. But here's why WWE should have stayed away from the Reed Flair diss, if you will, from Charlotte last night, or from Creative, obviously. We know that Creative is writing for them, and why they should no longer be doing this. So, my first thing is, it just shows how much of a hypocrite that the WWE can be, because they've embraced the politically correct policy here. We have come to know it as the PG era, where blood is not permitted in matches. Daniel Bryan gets released for a mix of questionably overzealous tie choke of Justin Roberts in the Nexus invasion, and spitting in John Cena's face. He was fired for that because we can't have that. We're the PG era. CM Punk gets just trashed for a tweet where he jokingly reflects upon shitting his pants during a match with curse words. But that was okay. Well, that wasn't okay. And this was. So, whether it's for the sake of sponsor acquisition, because I know that Vince loves the sponsors, a quote, getting with the times attitude, or some reason, this is why they are, PG, WWE's well within that politically correct realm. And they're in that bubble. It's entrenched. It's entrenched itself in the culture of today, in life, in the world. This is the WWE that brings in Susan G. Komen, created a Be a Star. They're attached to Connor's Cure. Yet somehow it's okay to mention Reed Flair. And Paige uses his death via accidental overdose, because that's what it was, to get into Charlotte's head. A man legitimately dies as he deals with his demons. And the company that considers shit a bad word, and shit tweets bad, and tie choking and juicing too much for their shows, is apparently okay with it. So, we can talk about a man that has died facing demons, but yet shit tweets and tie chokes and juicing and spitting in someone's face and blood, that's a no-go. Do you get the hypocrisy here, folks? Or just the favoritism, just whenever they feel like it? There's no possible justification for mentioning him that's any good. And while the blood, the tie choke, and the shit tweets were not WWE's idea, this was. This most likely was. And it's okay to be shocking. People like to be shocked watching television and cutting edge, supposedly. As long as it's not a wrestler doing it on their own and taking it on their initiative to better themselves. You can't do that. It's okay to be cutting edge. It's okay to be shocking as long as the WWE wants you to. You can't do it on your own. Unless you're Brock Lesnar. Or even that, who knows? Maybe WWE tells them, you know what, we want you to bleed. WWE is politically correct and their PG value system. It frowns upon blood. It frowns upon choking people. It frowns upon funny tweets with profanity. But hey, go ahead and mention someone who's died, who's passed away, to fabricate personal animosity in a make-believe feud. You can do that, but you can't tweet about shit, you can't bleed, and you can't choke people. Second, it shows how little they have to offer from a creative standpoint. Because we all know that they have nothing creatively. Nothing. The creative, what's the word I'm looking for? Creative in WWE, it used to be here. It used to be here. Now it's down here. Way down here. WWE's creativity is arguably at its lowest since 1995, 1996. And that was an era where everyone had to have a gimmick. Everyone had to have a profession. You know, we had IRS, we had Tugboat, we had everybody. And in 2015, the weekly shows blend into each other. Storylines, when existing, they're mostly lazy. We all know that. We've talked about it on the podcast. Matches are repeated ad nauseum. How many times do I have to see Dolph Ziggler and Summer Rae and Rusev? How many times do I have to see that? Orton and Sheamus. Cena and Orton, for the love of God. Very few wrestlers also clearly have well-defined characters. In a world in WWE that, again, professes to be entertainment, which, in most of its greatest forms, tends to be character-driven. Now, instead of Austin versus McMahon, Angle versus Eddie, Bryan versus Punk, JBL versus Eddie, WWE is bringing us Ziggler, Lana, Rusev, Summer Rae. And they strongly believe that putting 9 women in 3 groups of 3 that fight every week, that's a Divas Revolution. No, it's not. No, it's not. Not to mention also that while the WWE has the monopoly of the business, they do, its ego remains so high. And Sting, coming from WCW, has to pay admission upon his entry in the kingdom that is the WWE. By putting over the authority figure of the show in his debut match, while the said authority figure uses the momentum he gained from the win for nothing. Nothing. But we had to bury the WCW guy. This is arguably the best roster WWE has ever had. Dean Ambrose, Cesaro, Seth Rollins, The New Day, Finn Balor, Kevin Owens, Brock Lesnar, John Cena, Samoa Joe, so many others. And a swarm of female talent that is amazing. WWE has never seen this female talent before. And awaiting said roster is, again, arguably the least creative WWE management has had in decades. The ones who booked Sheamus versus Orton 700 times thought Taker should lose the streak without properly setting it up in the storyline and let Ziggler, Lana, Rusev, and Summer Rae continue forever and ever and ever, only to shut it down out of nowhere because TMZ reported on Lana and Rusev's affair and not affair, but getting engaged. Affair was the storyline, all that stuff. And they had dropped all that because they got engaged in real life. WWE has shown an increasingly difficult habit in making its fans care consistently about the product they're putting out. Forget NXT, which is partly due to the diverse crowds they have in terms of age groups. They have a lot of younger, older. But mainly because years of storytelling, we've had years of storytelling here for the WWE that they just weren't, for the most part, engaging. Not engaging storylines. Something that we just weren't caring about. So when you mention Reed Flair in a storyline, it's only the latest in a series of ineffective, creative attempts to shake things up. And again, we're talking about, folks, Reed Flair, why we shouldn't have brought it up, and also, this is also more of a dig and a dissection of how bad the WWE creative has gone. So when you mention Reed Flair in a storyline, it's bad. Here's why. We can argue about the percentage of the live and the televised audience who understood the reference, but it was probably quite minute people who got it. So, which means WWE is banking on a personal escalation of a feud through a reference from about 5 to 10% of your audience will understand. That's one of these things. 2, it was made to escalate a feud where Paige is the backstabbing ex-friend, their BFF, who needs to get her ass kicked. If the story had been well told, that's all you'd really need. Look at Seth Rollins and The Shield. That's all you would really need. So these two angles should have either been used to ignite different feuds or reignite the feud once its original approach, backstabbing stable member, runs its course, blah, 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 with all Seth Rollins. And they're not doing that with Charlotte and Paige. They didn't do that. Finally, just being blunt here. If you need to bring in legit dead relatives to get momentum on a feud, I have no idea what you're doing in the storytelling business. I have no clue. I'm flabbergasted. I don't know. Because you don't know. It's a hit and miss business. And right now I'm hard pressed to find a mark on that dartboard. 3. Oh, and about that unwritten rule of the, if the family approved it, it's fine, quote. Here's a tweet, at WWE, at Steph McMahon, at Vince McMahon, at Triple H. WWE writers really that lazy. Hashtag cheap heat, hashtag disgusting, hashtag disrespectful, hashtag cruel, hashtag sad, hashtag Raw Greenville. That was from Elizabeth Flair. So, 2 tries to guess who Elizabeth Flair is. That is Charlotte's mother. Flair's ex-wife. So, it's time to get your shit together, WWE. Uh-oh, I said shit. WWE may come after me. It's time to get your shit together and give the best talent that you've ever had, and apparently their families, the professionalism and creative excellence that they deserve. Because you have the best roster, arguably, ever in terms of wrestling talent in the WWE. And you have the worst creative system of all time. And then you have stuff like this on Monday night. They didn't... Okay, let's just go out there. Charlotte, say something about Reed Flair. Let's try and build this feud. No, if you put your time and your soul and your effort into building the feud, you wouldn't have to bring up Reed Flair. And you shouldn't have brought him up in the first place. Back after this.